So this video looks specifically at understanding how to deal with emergency procedures when you are working within a fitness environment. So to do that, we're going to look specifically at four things. The first thing is to identify the types of emergency that may occur in a fitness environment. Secondly, we're going to describe the roles that different staff and external services play during an emergency. Thirdly, we're going to explain the importance in following typical emergency procedures calmly and effectively. Again, just minimising any risks or any further risks, I suppose. And lastly, we are going to describe how to maintain the health and safety of all people involved. However, we'll specifically look at children, elderly people and disabled people, those people that are typically at a higher risk. So, what type of emergencies may occur in a fitness environment? And these are all pretty standard fare really. You've got your typical medical emergencies, you've then got accidents, fires and a bit extreme suspected bombs, and finally chemical emergencies. Now let's just break all of these down. First of all, your medical emergencies. You might end up with someone having a heart attack or a stroke on the gym floor or your fitness environment. Again, things like hypoglycemia may occur in diabetic individuals, and these are things you need to account for. And obviously, they would normally bring about the need for a 999 call. Now, accidents, a par for the course, I suppose, in any fitness environment. There's that many dynamic movements, different machines, that something is bound to happen. But again, it's all about minimising risk. Typical accidents that I've come across are people falling off treadmills, people dropping weights. One example of incorrect technique which resulted in a little bit of an accident was an individual stacking his bench press up too high, and it came down to it, he failed on one of his last reps, and because the way he'd set himself up, he actually had the bar in line with his neck and he almost guillotined himself, which is always interesting to watch. But again, that's something we have to deal with. A little bit extreme, as I mentioned, suspected bombs. I myself have been on bomb training once upon a time, and fires are a hazard in any environment, especially one with a lot of electrical equipment such as a gym. And finally, fitness studios, fitness environments that may have pools, for example, Bannatyne's, David Lloyd's, Total Fitness and the likes of. There are a lot of chemicals kicking around, and there's always a potential for something to go wrong when you are dealing with chemicals. But again, we are talking worst case scenario there. When an emergency comes around, there is a lot of different people and a lot of roles and responsibilities involved in dealing with it. You can see that the typical general manager and duty manager, first aid personnel that would be in the building at the time, they're your first point of call and they should deal with the emergency in the correct way. Other people involved might include the emergency services, so the fire brigade in the event of a fire, the police in the event of somebody going missing, for example, or an assault, and finally the ambulance crews, the paramedics in the case of a medical emergency. So they'll all work together to ensure that the emergency gets dealt with as effectively and efficiently as possible. When it comes down to it, most people can genuinely look after themselves when it comes to an emergency, but you really do have to keep your eye open for children, elderly and disabled people in the event of an emergency. Things you can do include providing comfort and reassurance to the individual, contact parents, carers or guardians. Think about what you're doing when it comes to physical contact with children. As a general rule of thumb, it's advantageous not to. But then again, isn't that just common sense? Think about the elderly and disabled people's mobility restrictions. They might have a wheelchair or a walking stick, and that might impact their ability to actually get away from an emergency. And finally, just think about the language you are using and the vocabulary, the terminology that you are using when dealing with these particular individuals. Hopefully this video has given you an insight into how to deal with an emergency. What I'd like you to do now is to complete the related questions to ensure you are working towards the completion of this mandatory module.